and welcome to the first episode, and possibly only, of a new series I've decided to try where I combine two things I like, which are cooking and waffling about writing and the such. So today I will be making soup whilst talking about how to write a sonnet. Now you might be thinking, what on earth does a sonnet have to do with soup? If you're thinking that, you've clearly misunderstood the premise of this series. But also, I do have an explanation. So sonnet comes from the Italian sonata, which means little song, and because poetry is very similar to songs, and obviously songs are a form of music, and the famous music man Beethoven once said, "Only the pure in heart can make a good soup." So basically, sonnets are soup. And I don't think my logic is flawed in that. Oh, I didn't put my pumpkin. What did you call him, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's Jeremy.
Jeremy the pumpkin is staring at you. A sonnet traditionally is a 14-line poem in iambic pentameter, often with themes of love, romance, and beauty, but not always. In my opinion, there are three official types of sonnets, in the same way there are only three types of soup. The main difference between these sonnets is mostly in that the rhyme scheme. You have, and I'm going to refer to my notes because I will forget, the Petrarchan or Italian sonnet, which goes A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, C, D, C, or C, D, E, C, D, E. Then there's the Spencerian sonnet, which goes A, B, B, C, B, C, C, D, C, D, E, E. This is one of the notes because I will say it wrong. Then the best sonnet, because I find them easier to write, the Shakespearean or English sonnet, which goes A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. It's also probably the easiest because most lines only need to rhyme once, or all lines only need to rhyme once, as opposed to like 3 or 4 times in the other ones. You may also see Miltonic sonnets mentioned, but they're basically Petrarchan sonnets. They're just about like boring things like politics and morality, so they suck. Then you have non-traditional sonnets, stretch sonnets, which are obviously longer than 14 lines, curtal sonnets, which have fewer than 14 lines, sonnet sequences, which is a bunch of sonnets about one thing, modern sonnets, which are sonnets that don't follow the rules, and the terza rima, which is actually a completely different type of poem, but can accidentally be a sonnet sometimes. Not really a type of sonnet, but it's mentioned in lists, so I thought I should probably mention it. But anyway, the three types of sonnet that are important to look at, I think, are the Petrarchan, Spencerian, and Shakespearean, so that's what we'll focus on. Once you understand the rules, you can break and bend them as required to make the sonnet you want to write. So back to the soup. This is a bastardization of my mum's recipe, although I use recipe in the loosest sense, because she didn't really follow a set recipe. It is essentially a medley of vegetables chucked in a pot and prayed over. I love this soup. I used to have it a lot when I was little, and it holds a lot of fond memories for me, but I can never quite recreate it the same way my mum did. Probably because she used things like bay leaves, which I can't be bothered to get. I can't afford to just buy bay leaves. The pumpkin isn't part of my mum's recipe. That's literally just because I had one left over from Halloween, hence the googly eyes. So the ingredients I've got here are onions, celery, carrots, lentils, potatoes. I've also got a pepper, which also isn't my mum's recipe, it's just because I had one and needs using, and pumpkin. My mum's recipe also used like kale and leeks, but I don't have any, and I don't want to go get any because it's raining. I've also got some spinach, but that's in the freezer because I forgot to take it out and didn't look very attractive, so I'll get that out later. So the first thing I always do when I'm making anything is I chop everything up first, because I'm really, really slow at chopping. So if I chopped and then cooked and then chopped, the cooking would burn. So I am going to prepare my vegetables in a minute, and then we'll jump to the next stage. But as I prepare my vegetables, one might find it useful to prepare one's sonnet before one writes it. As in, decide on your themes, your messages, what exactly are you trying to say with this sonnet. And so they are typically about love and romance, beauty, nature. Just go read a few, you'll see that they all kind of follow the same sort of themes. But you don't have to write about those themes. You can make them quite meta or subversive, or you can pull a Milton and write about like politics or something dull. Because sonnets are really big into rhymes, it's also a good idea to get ready a rhyming dictionary and a thesaurus, because you will need them. So let's start. Our vegetables have been chopped. Jeremy the pumpkin has been murdered, and I have scooped out his brains with my bare hands. His brains are in the fridge because I plan on roasting them at some point. I'm hoping the squirrels will like them, so I'm going to roast them for the squirrels. The first thing I always do is chuck in the onions. I've also got the peppers in here because I'll chuck them in first, I decided. Hopefully the oil is hot enough. It should make a very specific sound, or so Greg Wallace tells me. Yeah. Listen to that hiss. Meanwhile, with our sonnet, there is only so much planning one can actually do, because most of it is going to be in its form. It's not like a novel where you can sit and plot and plan and think and world build for hours. With a sonnet, you just got to put it down on paper. But once it's on paper, you can actually concentrate on fitting it into its required form. I've already talked a bit about the forms that sonnets take, but let's look a bit more specifically about them. I'm going to concentrate on Shakespearean sonnets because, as I said, they are my favourite and are the ones I like writing in the most. So we'll take a look at one of my favourite Shakespearean sonnets, which I have here in this fancy book. I'll probably put it on the screen as well if I remember. Sonnet 116. You can see the rhyme structure A, B, C, D, C, D, and so on and so forth. Written, and then it's got its couplet at the end. And it is written iambically, which means it follows an unstressed stress pattern. And it's a pentameter, which means there are 5 lots of unstressed stress leading to a 10-syllable line. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. It's got a very pleasing meter, which is why it's meant to be written in that meter. And that is like the first thing I would look for when I'm reading sonnet, just to make sure it follows that meter, because that's what gives it its very lyrical and song-like quality. So look out for that. Now you want to sort of cook the onions. You sweat them, apparently, is the actual phrase, which is a bit upsetting because it's quite a grim word. But once they're sweated, which means they've sort of gone slightly translucent, you'll want to chuck in, I always put carrots and celery in next. At this stage you can also put garlic in if you want garlic. I nearly did, but my mum didn't actually put garlic in her recipe, so I've not. But garlic probably works. Everyone likes garlic. I always cut it up quite small because I think it cooks quicker, but it's not really that important. Anyway, at this point I would also put in the leeks, but I don't have any leeks, so if you are using leeks, make sure you wash them thoroughly, because leeks are little dirt traps. Especially because I get them from like Lidl, so they're just fresh out of the soil, unwashed. So you find when you chop them up, there's also bits of like dirt in them, in between the layers. So if you're going to use leeks, wash them. Unless you like the earthy taste, I suppose you might. I am, whilst doing this video, also trying to write my own sonnet. I might sort of have moments where I just zone out because I'm trying to think of what rhymes with, you know, soup, because I'm writing a sonnet about soup. I was going to write it about cheese because of G.K. Chesterton, but I can't remember the quote I was going to put it in response to, and I haven't looked it up, so maybe I'll just mess about cheese. So now that the carrots and celery have heated up, I'm going to put in potatoes and my remains of Jeremy, R.I.P. Oh, is Jeremy going to fit? This always happens. I need a bigger pot. Alright, let's try and get Jeremy in. Jeremy's not as nice an orange colour as I was hoping he would be, but maybe it's just because he's next to carrots, which are violently orange. Oh, he fits. It's very delicate business making soup. Just like it's delicate business writing sonnets.
Oh, that's so much quieter.
I know. You'll notice that I've prepared this lovely jug of what looks like swamp juice, but it's actually vegetable stock. I've got about 900... It's difficult to tell in this kitchen because it's sort of slanted. Right, yes, so stock, liquid, is the next step of making soup. I can't remember how much to use, so I used 2 stock cubes worth, because I think that's how much my mum uses, and the stock cubes I have make 450ml each, so hence 900ml, roughly, I hope. This is a great lead-in, by the way. The stock will alter the soup's consistency. In the same way, the Volta changes the tone of the poem.
Crying out loud.
That was amazing. I don't know. Yes, great. Right, so I'm going to chuck a lot of technical terms at you. I'm also going to get my notes because I'm going to get it wrong. The volta, which comes from, I think, the Italian for a change or a turn, is it's a change in the poem. So the type of sonnet will affect the volta and how it is used and where in the poem it comes, because it's cut at a very specific time. In a Petrarchan sonnet, which is the Italian one, the volta comes between the octave and the sestet, so between the first 8 lines and the last 6 lines. Usually in a Petrarchan sonnet, the octave will introduce a problem or a question, and then the sestet will sort of answer it or give a solution to it, hence the volta changing from question to answer, problem to solution. In a Shakespearean sonnet, the volta comes right at the end, just before the rhyming couplet. It can again also be a sort of solution to problems or questions brought up in the first 12 lines, but it can also summarise the themes of the poem. So if your poem is about, as in my favourite one, about love and the nature of love to not change, the last 2 lines basically summarise his thoughts on the matter succinctly. The more complicated volta is in the Spencerian one, because there can be 2. The first volta comes after the second quatrain, a quatrain being 4 lines, and then a second one may come after the third quatrain, just before the last rhyming couplet. The first volta may be a fake one. It may offer a sort of false solution to something brought up in the first 2 quatrains, and then the second volta will then introduce the correct solution. If you kind of write something more ambiguously, or perhaps with 2 ways of looking at it, you want to explore both, a Spencerian sonnet may be more useful to you than the other ones. Right, I'm going to chuck in the stock now. Oh, that heats up really quickly. Got to keep your workstation neat. Ratatouille taught me that. An excellent documentary. The next thing I'm going to throw in lentils. As a vegetableist, I need protein, so I use lentils because I like lentils. My mum also uses pearl barley, but I've never actually seen pearl barley in the shops, so I suspect she's made it up, and it is as fictitious as the Guernsey cow. I don't know how much to put in because I've never actually measured it before. I just sort of guess. So let's just chuck in. I've got red lentils, which will basically turn to mush. And they absorb a lot of water, so also if you put too much water in, these are really good for soaking it up. That'll do. These are green lentils. They don't look very green, but they are, I swear. These will retain more form than the red ones, so they kind of give a little bit more bite and more texture. These are used a lot in like some curries, along with like chickpeas. They're pretty good though. Let's chuck in some of those. It looks like a lot, but as soon as I mix it in, it won't look like very much at all. The other thing I'm going to put in is spinach. I'm not going to put in that just yet because I'm going to wait for that to reduce down a little bit, but frozen spinach. Lots of lovely iron, and it's cheaper frozen, so if you are going to get spinach, get it frozen because it lasts ages and it's easier to use because it's already shrunken down. And it's cheaper. So I think I've pretty much gone over all the key points of sonnets. You know the meter, and you know the rhyme scheme and the themes, and the volta. When it comes to actually like writing one, it's really difficult to give a walkthrough because everyone's creative process is going to be vastly different. A few tips and tricks though to help write sonnets. Firstly, is keep it focused. A sonnet is actually quite a small poem. It's only 14 lines, and you have a strict number of syllables you can use in each line. So you don't have the space to be talking a lot about lots of different things. Pick one theme or a message or an idea and really stick to it. It doesn't need to be complex and deep. You can literally just write a sonnet about like a pretty sunflower. Some of the most famous ones are just describing pretty things. It does not have to be deep. It can just be nice. You can add like some bite to it with the idea of the fleeting nature of beauty. There's one that's like about, I think, these fields, golden fields, and how like quickly they'll turn brown and disgusting, which is quite nice. You can subvert beauty if you want, like Shakespeare does in his famous Sonnet 130, which is the "My mistress eyes are nothing like the sun," which everyone knows. Or again, you can do a Milton and just do something that's not nice and beautiful. You can write about like politics or morality or something like that. I keep saying like that's really dull. It's not. It's just I don't like writing about them because I don't understand politics. But yeah, keep it focused. Unlike me, who will waffle on for ages about nothing. Keep your imagery tangible. It's something that I've been taught a lot while studying writing. I like going abstract. Do not go abstract. Make sure your images are things that the reader can actually picture and imagine and understand. It is easy to write vague and abstract imagery, but it's not ideal for poetry. And it's going to make it more difficult for the reader to understand what exactly you're trying to say and what it is you're trying to describe, especially with sonnets, which are associated with beauty. Keep it focused and to the point, without too much faff, in the same way the lentils will soak up the excess liquid, to leave you with a nice thick soup, rather than watery soup. Unless you like watery soup, in which case, great, I guess. You weirdo. Do not be afraid to use a thesaurus or rhyming dictionary. There is no shame in it, and that's how I wrote most of my poems. Also, you can use like near rhymes or assonance if you can't find a perfect rhyme. That's also okay. You're just going to have to use your creative instinct to decide whether or not a near rhyme sounds correct on the page. You can use enjambment, which is basically where a line will run into the next line. So each line does not need to be its own complete sentence or clause and end with like an invisible piece of punctuation. They can just run on. That's fine. One website said that's specifically like a Milton thing to do, but Shakespeare used it, so they lied basically. It gives you a lot more freedom with where rhyming words can come in the sentence and you're like constructing lines. So that's something to just keep in mind, because I think a lot of people try to make each line its own complete clause or sentence, and that can make it really difficult to word things in a way that aren't weird. Poems, they are not prose. You don't actually need to use like full sentences and proper grammar. As long as it makes sense and it flows nicely, it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously you don't want it to just be like a list of fragmented clauses, but you don't need to worry too much about it being a grammatically correct sentence. And the most important thing is just to be patient. You can't rush it. With both your poem and with your lovely soup. I think it's best to get the poem on paper as quickly as you can, to sort of cement the themes and the content. And when you're writing it down, you don't even need to be that strict with like the form, with regards to the meter or rhyme scheme or anything. You can sort of edit it later to fit the correct form. But I think as long as you kind of get it on paper first, what you're actually trying to say, it really helps just to get it out of your head first. Because when it's in your head, you can't do much with it. When it's on paper, you can faff with it. And that's good. And so here we are at the end. Now, if you've been following my very detailed instructions, you should now have in front of you a lovely bowl of delicious soup and an amazing sonnet. So I added the spinach after I stopped recording, which is why it's got this interesting green colour. I've also blitzed half of it, so I still got some chunks, but it's also kind of thick. I also added some water because it was very, very, very thick. But if you'd like soup quite watery, you're going to want to add a lot more liquid or a lot fewer vegetables. But yeah, you basically just do it to your own taste. You don't have to put the spinach in. It was quite a nice yellowy colour before I put the spinach in. So yeah, and I did write a sonnet about soup, and I swear I wrote it whilst I was making soup. I didn't write it beforehand. I've literally written this in the last hour. Not even that. So I'm going to read it out just for funsies, because it's not very good, but whatever. Of all the different dishes in the world, from stews and pies and macaroni cheese to cakes and strudel, tarts and Arctic roll, it is well known that soup trumps all of these. When winter strikes and freezes autumn dead, its liquid warmth is comfort from the cold, and if the flu should keep you sick in bed, a bowl of soup is worth its weight in gold. Easy to make, there's really no excuse. It's versatile for any need or taste. to fill you up or chase away the blues, and freeze as well so none will go to waste. There's nothing in this world I can't withstand, as long as there's a bowl of soup to hand. And it's my special soup mug in case I forget what it is I'm eating. It's very important that when you've got my memory. So that's all I've got to say. I'll put the vague recipe I use in the description if you want to make this soup. You don't have to make a sonnet, it's not a requirement, but if you want to, and if you do have a go at either making soup or writing a sonnet, I'd love to hear about your attempts. Leave a sonnet in the comments. I'll say goodbye and enjoy my soup.